Health and fitness requires more than just the physical work. It starts with the work you put in to grow your mind. Welcome to the Mind Gains podcast, where we discuss what it takes mentally to see results physically. I'm your host, Jess. Let's get started. Okay, I am pumped for this episode. I've said this before, but nutrition is my favorite piece of all things health and fitness to talk about. I just love educating on it, and I loved learning all about it through my own research when I first started and through obtaining my CNC certification. I genuinely love this topic, and this episode is going out to those who are like me. All my guys and girls that geek out a little bit over the science behind nutrition. And more specifically today, we're going to be talking about the science behind protein. This is going to be sort of like a mini series of episodes over the next few weeks. I'm going to do a deep dive into each of the macronutrients. If you don't already know, the three macronutrients are proteins, fats, and my personal favorite, carbohydrates. These are the three macros, and the amount of each of these that you're eating throughout the day are what add up to your total calories consumed. All three are extremely important to the optimal functioning of our body, and we want to be eating proteins, fats, and yes, carbs as well. But where people really get tripped up, I think, is eating the correct amounts of each. And if you're not paying attention to your nutrition, there is a really, really good chance that your diet is going to be very rich in fats and refined carbohydrates and not nearly rich enough in protein. So it's not so much that you shouldn't be eating the fats and the carbs, it's just that you might not be eating the right amounts of them. But then people tend to go all the way on the other side of the spectrum and either try to completely cut out fats or carbs or eat extremely low amounts of them, which is not the solution because, again, your body needs all three in order to optimally function. Each macronutrient has a very important role in the body, and I will never recommend to do anything that goes against the natural functioning of the human body. We want to work with them, not against them. And unless you specifically have a medical reason to do so, you don't want to cut out entire food groups or severely restrict them when your body's natural function is to utilize them to function at your highest level when consumed in the proper amounts and from the proper sources. All right? Good rule of thumb to follow. So, with that being said, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the rules of each macronutrient, as well as the general recommended breakdown of your daily intake in regards to these over the course of the next few episodes. Because if you know why you're eating X amount of grams of protein and X amount of grams of fats and carbs each day, you're going to be so much more likely to actually stick with those numbers because you understand what each of them do for you. And if you know why carbs and fats and protein are each beneficial for you, especially in regards to your health and fitness goals, you're not going to be as tempted to cut out carbs to try and lose some weight before your beach getaway in 2 weeks. Knowing and fully understanding the why behind everything that you're doing is essential. If you have no idea why you're eating 150 grams of protein a day, someone on the internet just told you that you should, but you have zero idea what that protein is doing for you, how long do you think you're going to stick to that? Probably not very, because it's most likely not going to be that important to you because there was no explanation as to why you should eat 150 grams of protein a day. So my goal for this mini series is that you come out of it understanding each macronutrient a lot more than you do right now. And for today, to kick things off, we're going over protein. So let's get it. Protein is like the foundation of the world of fitness. It's every bodybuilder and gym rat's best friend. I wanted to start here because I think of any of the macros, this is the one that most people understand the most. I'm sure we've all heard that we should be eating more protein, but you might not fully understand why. Proteins are made up of organic compounds called amino acids. There are 20 different types of amino acids, and 9 of them are more specifically called essential amino acids. And the reason for this is that those 9 essential amino acids, or EAAs, cannot be made in the body. They must be obtained through the diet. Now, this is going to be important a little later on, so I wanted to start there. I know a lot of us already involved in the world of health and fitness know this information, but proteins are essential in the building and the maintenance of muscle mass. This is why, like I said, gym rats, bodybuilders, anyone who's looking to put on some muscle mass, regardless of how much, needs to be eating adequate protein. Really, we all should be, regardless of whether you want to build muscle or not. But if you are someone who's looking to put on some muscle, you must be eating enough protein. After your workout, after you finish lifting heavy weight in the gym and you're back home and resting, the proteins that are obtained through the diet are what are being pushed into the broken down muscle fibers while you're resting so that they have the ability to repair themselves and build back bigger and stronger. If you're not eating enough protein, that whole process is not happening. You are not recovering well from your workout and you're not building anything. And honestly, depending on how little you're eating, you might not even be maintaining what you already do have. The dietary proteins you consume are what ultimately allow you to become bigger, stronger, and to recover from your workout. But proteins also have numerous other valuable functions in the body. Enzymes are proteins in the body that help with the biochemical reactions happening within cells. Proteins provide structure to our cells. A great example of this is collagen. Most of us are pretty familiar with this. A lot of us are taking collagen. Collagen is the structural protein of our skins, bones, tendons, and ligaments. Antibodies are proteins in the blood that help protect us when we get sick. Proteins help transport and store nutrients. They can act as certain hormones, such as HGH, or human growth hormone, which helps tissues and bones grow. Insulin, which promotes the uptake of glucose, aka sugar, into cells, and glucagon, which does the opposite. It promotes the breakdown and the release of stored glucose. Proteins help us maintain proper pH balance with hemoglobin. They provide energy, just so many things. So it's not just about, I want to have more muscle. Adequate protein intake is vital for proper functioning of the body and overall health. And even if you don't care about building muscle, if you're just wanting to maintain what you already do have, you're still going to need to be eating a good amount because there's something called protein turnover that's happening constantly in your body. And simply put, protein turnover is the continuous process of breaking down and rebuilding proteins in your body. Protein is being broken down into amino acids through protein degradation, and proteins are being rebuilt through protein synthesis from amino acids. Think about this like a balance scale. You have protein breakdown on one side and protein synthesis on the other. The breakdown is happening constantly, and as you're eating protein, your body is able to synthesize new proteins from the amino acids of the protein that you ate in order to maintain this balance. But if you aren't eating enough protein, that scale is going to start heavily tipping down on the breakdown side because the degradation is happening regardless. Your body isn't going to stop doing this, but now you're not eating enough proteins to keep the scale balanced, so you're going to be losing muscle mass. And this starts really becoming an issue as we age. Sarcopenia starts kicking in, which is the age-related loss of muscle mass, and this ain't a good thing. Beyond just physical appearance and the fact that having some muscle mass looks nice, it's what allows our bodies to be able to function well. Muscle is what gives us our strength and our balance, our ability to walk and move. And as you can imagine, if we're greatly losing our muscle mass as we age, as most people do, because they're A, not eating enough protein, and B, not staying active in strength training, we have greater fall and injury risks, we become more dependent, and we have a greater chance of an untimely passing. Muscle mass is going to degrade as we age. That is part of the natural aging process. But in the world that we live in, most people are not taking care of themselves. They're not exercising regularly, staying active, or adopting good nutrition practices. And I don't know about you guys, but I can see the repercussions of that everywhere I look. So, yes, muscle is going to degrade over time, but it can be greatly helped and slowed down by frequent strength training and adequate protein intake. So, all of that to say that even if you're just trying to maintain the muscle that you do have, you still need to be eating enough protein to prevent losing it. This is why bodybuilders and people in this realm still eat a lot of protein even after they gain their muscle. Because if they were to just stop or significantly reduce their protein intake, their body would start breaking down that muscle pretty quickly. All right, so we know why protein intake is so important now, but you might still be wondering how much protein you should be eating every day. And the true answer is that it depends. It depends on your current body composition, how much protein you were previously eating, what your goals are. So there's not a magic number that I can give you, but the general recommendation is around 30% of your daily intake. So if you were eating 2,000 calories a day, for instance, 30% would be 150 grams of protein a day. And the way you would find that number is by multiplying 2,000 by zero point 0.3 for 30% to get 600. You would then divide that number that you get, 600 in this instance, by 4 because there are 4 calories for every 1 gram of protein. But that's very general. My personal recommendation is to eat 1 gram of protein for every 1 pound of body weight that you have. So if you weigh 120 pounds, that would be eating around 120 grams of protein a day. If you weigh 145 pounds, that would be eating 145 grams of protein a day. With that being said, though, if you are just starting out and you're like, what the 120 grams of protein? I have a hard time getting like 90 grams a day. Start off at 90 grams of protein a day. Do that until it becomes easy and then bump it up to 100 grams. Once that feels comfortable, bring it up to 110 grams a day. Work your way up to it. If you try to go from 90 grams to 120 grams a day, you're probably going to get really fed up because it was too big of a jump to make and it's too much of a challenge. And now you're giving up and you're back to square one. Just work your way up to it. I promise it gets easier. I remember riding the struggle bus every day to try and get in my protein goal. And now I have to be very conscious to not greatly eat over my goal that is much higher now than it was when I first started because I'm like, dang, well, I need to eat more carbs and fats. Like, I got to pull back on my protein for the day. It gets easier. I pinky promise. Now, protein sources. This is where a lot of people just start adding in a protein shake for breakfast and then a protein bar for a snack. And then they're doing a protein mug cake for dessert that night. And holy goodness, that is a lot of processed protein for the day. I know it makes it easier to reach your protein target, but your gut is going to suffer. Our bodies do not know how to process that much processed protein well. It is absolutely okay to include those things. But the thing to remember with any form of processed protein is that it's a supplement. It should be supplemental to your diet and to what you're already eating. You shouldn't be relying on 4 servings of protein powder for the day to meet your target. So, my general rule of thumb for this is no more than 1 serving of processed protein a day. Again, whether that's from a protein shake, protein bar, protein powder, Kodiak pancakes, legendary protein Pop-Tarts, whatever it is. Again, general rule of thumb, but there might be individual variances here. You might be someone who does a lot better with only including a serving every other day or every few days. That is up to you to experiment with. But I will say that if you find that you're having digestive issues and you're eating some type of processed protein every day, I would start here. Especially if the rest of your diet has stayed pretty consistent, it could very well be the protein powder. Whenever one of my clients say that their digestion is off, the first thing I look for in their food log is how much protein powder they're having. And 9 times out of 10, what do you know? This is the culprit. It is always going to be ideal to get at least the majority of your protein from whole food sources. That really goes for anything, but we're specifically talking about protein today. So prioritize your whole foods. Prioritize your chicken breast, chicken thighs, ground beef, turkey, fish, shrimp, steak, whole foods. And if you're asking yourself what a whole food is, the best way to think about it is opting for something that looks as close as possible to what it does in nature. If you're at the grocery store and you're trying to decide between the package of chicken breast and the package of frozen chicken nuggets, pick the chicken breast. That looks as close to as it would if you were to go out and find it in nature. You're not going to find a frozen chicken nugget out in the wilderness. I promise you. Now, I know some people out there don't enjoy animal protein sources, and I've been asked about plant protein sources. And the short answer is that yes, you can get in just as much protein from plant sources as you can from animal. But the thing to remember with plant protein sources is that they are incomplete sources of protein. Going back to what I was saying earlier about amino acids and EAAs, an incomplete protein source is one that does not include all 9 essential amino acids, aka the ones that have to be obtained through the diet. Plant protein sources, other than soy, are incomplete because they're lacking one or more of the EAAs, whereas animal protein sources are complete, meaning they do include all 9 EAAs. An amino acid needs to be complete because it has to have all of the required parts in order to create a functional protein. If it's missing any of these parts, it won't be able to connect with all of its friends, the other amino acids in the body, to function properly. So, when eating incomplete protein sources, you would have to eat them in combination with other incomplete protein sources that contain the specific EAA that the first one was missing. I know that seems kind of confusing, but essentially, you have to just eat a variety of different plant protein sources in order to ensure you're combining the incomplete sources together so that they're fully functional. A good example of this is eating beans with rice. Both beans and rice are each missing a certain EAA, so they're both incomplete. But if you eat them together, they form a complete protein because each of them contains the EAA that the other one is missing. And you don't actually have to eat them together, just eating them within the same day is sufficient. But, beans and rice typically go together. So, long story short, yes, you can get in just as much protein from plant sources, but you just may have to be strategic to make sure that you're getting in complete proteins. Well, that is it. That is all I have for you today. I think I pretty much covered everything when it comes to protein, but if I missed anything, let me know. If you have any follow-up questions on protein, just shoot them over to me. Like I said, this was the first part of a 3-part series where I'm going to deep dive into each macronutrient. We've still got carbs and fats coming up, so you want to be sure to tune in for those as well, because those two are just as important as protein is, and we most definitely don't want to be missing out on those either. I'm not sure which one I'll do next. I was thinking carbs, just because this one tends to be a little more controversial, and people hesitate a ton on carbs, but it is also my favorite, so I might save the best for last. As always, reach out if you have any questions, comments, suggestions. I greatly appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you next time.